Okay, well, thanks, Ed. Yeah, I've been involved in GridTracker probably for this year and a half or so. Kind of when Tag Lomas was starting to develop it. He had developed it a bit, and he started reaching out. And he reached out to me one day and said, what can you do, and what additional features would you like? And I had some input. Tag has since kind of disappeared. I think it just got to be too much, and now there's a development group doing it. If any of you guys are developers, this is actually open source. And if you download it, I got the directories are in the end of the presentation I sent. You'll find it, but all the source code is actually with it because it runs in Java. It runs in Node. I think it's Node.js. So you can change it yourself if you want to. Pretty cool program. It can get a little slow at times because it's not a compiled language. But I found a neat program. So we'll go ahead and work our way down the slides here, I think. Come on, next slide. This is just a workflow, and I just set this up. This is kind of a way you can expand it to if you want to. But if you want to use this picture, just cross out everything but the 7300 up top on the left there, GridTracker in the middle, and whatever your favorite cloud logger or local logging program is. And then PSK Reporter also feeds information back, spot information. If you have it set up, it'll feed it back into GridTracker so you can see where you've been spotted. Right now, I'm actually running a Flex 6600. I'm running 4 slice receivers, and that's why you see me on 4 bands at once here. I've been bouncing around. Wherever I see something that I want to work, I've been working it. And then another thought that some people have is down at the lower left corner, you'll see I've got a receive only SDR. And you could use that with like a small antenna. So you could go ahead and monitor another band. And if you see something come by you like, you could go ahead and work it and just bring it over to your 7300 or whatever your primary radio is. But a simple SDR will feed GridTracker read only or receive only. So you can kind of watch what's going on somewhere else if you don't have the luxury of a radio with multiple receivers in it. So this is just a header slide for GridTracker setup. And it's kind of the things we're going to cover. I don't have a slide for the grids tab because basically it's eye candy. It's what do you want the grids to look like? I'm fine with yellow and red and the standard colors. Update information at the bottom there. It just tells you basically the latest release and what's going on there. And then the about screen is the copyright. It is open source, as I mentioned. So let's dive on into it. So GridTracker setup, and pretty much this is GridTracker. If you haven't messed with WSJTX, GridTracker should run for you on a single machine out of the box without issue. I've installed it a number of times without any issues at all. The key things that must match are the UDP ports between GridTracker and WSJTX. And you'll see on the left, I've circled the UDP port, which is 2237 as the default. That has to, or it will not work, go over to port 2237 on GridTracker. And that's presuming, the way it's set up right here is presuming it's on the same machine. Because if you look at WSJTX, it's sending it to the 127 address, which is the local host address. If you want to, and this is possible to do, if you want to say run WSJTX on a Linux box and GridTracker on a Mac, you can do that. You just got to know some networking. But the key is the way I've got it set up here should work generically. And the real thing that I moderate the on and off the GridTracker Groups IO forum. And it's one of the biggest problems people have is seem to get them hooked up. Once they're hooked up, they seem to work okay. So match up those 2 ports, and they should talk to each other. The WSJTX and GridTracker will talk. And then this UDP on the right, there it says forward UDP messages. That's where they get forwarded to, like for N1NM or log for OM, one of those programs. So if we back up here, you'll see the flow comes off the radio through WSJTX, flows through GridTracker, and then once the QSO is completed, then it flows out either to like Logbook of the World in the cloud or to like N1NM, a local thing. So it's really key to get the flow correct. And once you do that, it should work like a champ. As I note at the bottom here, they don't have to be running on the same machine. So let's take a look at the general screen. And if I'm going too fast or have questions, please slow me down. Here, the key thing is I'm looking at the call sign lookup. And when you go into the, and we'll look at it later, the call roster, you can actually right click on a call sign and look it up. And I'm using qrz.com. And I put my credentials and stuff in there. The rest of it's pretty well. You also down at the bottom, you want to look at the ULS database. It uses that for some addresses and stuff. And then the ARL logbook of the world, I find it's real important that you pull that down at least once a week. What that does, for me anyway, is on the call roster, we'll see there's a column that's called LOTW, logbook of the world. And you can hover over it and see when the last time somebody uploaded to logbook of the world, and you'll see if they even participate. Maybe I'm snobbish, but my feeling is if you're not keeping score, I really don't want to play. So pretty much I work people that just work with logbook of the world. So as I make contacts, they get logged, you know, in both directions. And that's why you want to get these things set up.
Roger, when this, excuse me, when this references qrz.com, is that network traffic across the internet?
Oh yeah.
Or can it read some kind of local cached file?
No, it's it looks up each one, so it's internet traffic.
All right. Yeah, my use case again is I'm on a hilltop with limited internet. But that's okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've never really monitored how much traffic it generates. I don't think a whole lot, but yeah, if you've got limited internet, like on a cell phone hotspot, it could get expensive and not be very responsive.
Yeah. PSK reporter burned my internet, sorry, my cell phone data allocation once, so I shy away from that. But qrz.com is just an XML file lookup. It's
Yep.
Do it.
Okay, we'll move down to GridTracker setup. Pretty much I leave this the way it comes out of the box. There's two different potential text-to-speech voices. I find the default one is fine. You can make it speak faster by changing the speech rate. One thing about GridTracker, there's not a lot of damage you can do to it. So I tell people to hover over things and try things. And the audio device, depending on how many audio devices you got, it should pick out the right one. Although sometimes it won't. And I'll be honest, I do not use alerts. I find them highly annoying. But many people like the alerts.
Quick question again, the text-to-speech voice, Microsoft David Desktop, is that a licensed or open source kind of
I believe it's built into Windows.
Oh, okay.
I never had to download it. So I think it's at least part of Windows 10.
Okay.
And then let's say if you're not getting audio, make sure that your audio is going to the right place. Like maybe make sure it's not like your audio is not going to 7300. I've heard people have done that before. And sometimes Windows, when like if you plug your cell phone into Windows, when I do anyway, to charge, sometimes it decides to reorganize all the audio input and output.
Okay.
And then I leave the QSO log event notification off because I really just don't want to hear it. GridTracker map. Okay, this is one, Dave, you're going to be interested in. The map that you're seeing right behind me there. That's an online map, the National Geographic Esri map. And there's probably 20 or 30 maps you can use on a GridTracker. If you go to the bottom, there's an offline map that's loaded. All the other maps are downloaded as you resize them and stuff. So you'll want to, so Dave, you'll want to go down and click on the very top there, current map. And it's a monochrome, it's a pretty basic map, but it says out to the right-hand side, offline. So if you're using it like on a laptop or on a Raspberry Pi, something like that, that's what you're going to want on top of a mountain. Another thing I do is I click the QRZ missing grid DXCC fallback. What it does is, what, you know how people will send a request, but they don't send the grid square with their WSJTX message, FT8 message. What we do is we determine where the DXCC entity is. Like if it's, you know, Iran, we just point the, and you'll see this in a bit. In fact, you'll see on the map, there's a red highlight there, or a red path, which will go right to the grid square if it's sent. If it's not, we just, the red path from your station, your QTH, to where it's going, ends up in the center of the DXCC. Just so you got some rough idea where on the planet you're going to land, or you think you're going to land, which helps when you are aiming a beam antenna. So there's not a lot there, but that's the one thing, Dave, I can see you're going to need is the offline map. And anyone else, even Field Day, if you don't have good internet access, you'll want to go to an offline map. Because some of these maps, even on a high-speed connection, can load a bit slow. They're pretty detailed, some of them. And this is the one that I like. Just go through them and pick the one that's your favorite eye candy map. Okay, this is where it gets a little more interesting. GridTracker setup logging. There is a GridTracker, and you'll find I've got a key files down a ways in the display, but this top line here, GridTracker, it actually keeps a log file, an ADIF file of everything that it logs if you turn it on. You can also read in the local files here. At startup, you can read in old log files so that you can see what you have worked. Because if you're starting, you know, like now, you've worked a lot of countries, a lot of states, you may want to see the old logs to see what you had worked, you know, previously. And it will let you do that. And just add the files. If you want to know the path to the file, once you do it, you can hover over it. And like everything in GridTracker, if you're unsure, hover over. A lot of times there's a tooltip or there's additional information that's kind of just waiting to be hovered over. PSK Reporter is for spots. GridTracker is going to actually go out to PSK Reporter and see where you've been spotted. And on your call roster, which we'll see in a bit here, it'll tell you how long ago you were spotted and what your signal level was. And then you've got a bunch of options below that for logging out to cloud services like, you know, ClubLog or QRZ.com. You'll see that I've got Logbook of the World, the one I have checked off at the bottom there with the green highlight. You probably do not. There's a bug right now in GridTracker. You do not want to set startup. It's supposed to download only the changes since the last time it downloaded. So if you had 20 QSOs, it's supposed to just download the 20. Unfortunately, because of a bug, it downloads all your QSOs in Logbook of the World forever, which can take some time. So you probably want that turned off. You do probably want logging turned on. I encourage anyway, at least people to turn on logging, because that way, as soon as you finish the QSO, it's logged up to Logbook of the World immediately. And you don't have to fuss. It's no mess, no fuss for the most part. And I say for the most part because there appears to be a problem in Logbook of the World that probably about 1 in 1,000 QSOs that you send out never get logged. I went through a couple weekends ago and I downloaded all my QSOs from a Logbook of the World, and there were about 30 of them that were in my GridTracker log that were not in my Logbook of the World. I know I upload everything, so there's a few QSOs that get lost somewhere in the ARL Logbook of the World cloud environment. And then below that, you'll see you've got set up for different loggers. NN1M, log for OM. And what you do there is just set the IP address of the machine it's on. If it's on the local machine, then just use the 127 address and check the radio button to log to that. And make sure, again, your port that you've got specified here is the one that your logbook program is receiving on. And these are set up as the defaults. So again, if you haven't messed with stuff out of the box, it should just work. I'm gonna get a drink. So any questions there? And I think I covered up the way the logbook is located at the top there. I realized that. But that's on another sheet anyway for you.
Yeah. Roger, one quick question on that last list.
Okay.
Yeah, that still a little confused. There's 3 columns: menu, startup, and log ? What does the column really mean if you turn on a check mark in each of those?
Okay, I should have covered that. Okay, menu means it's if you see on the right-hand side that you've got a bunch of icons in the lower right corner. That's the main menu. So like you'll see I've got on the bottom row, second one from the left, it says logbook of the world. Or it says log LLTW.
Oh, okay.
That's what turned that on. If you had set up for HRD log, there'd been an icon for that also. So that's what that is. And then startup means do you read the log in at startup? As I said, the logbook of the world, it's supposed to be only updates, except it reads the entire log, which is a very slow, painful process. And then the log column is telling GridTracker to send it out to that target. So in my case, I've got logbook of the world in the menu on the lower right corner there. And then I'm telling GridTracker to send all the QSOs out to logbook of the world in real time. And then once you do, I usually send them just to logbook of the world. Once you do that, like for QRZ.com, you can go into settings and import, and you can grab your stuff off logbook of the world and pull it on into like QRZ or any of the other programs or other cloud services. You can't go the other way though. Logbook of the world doesn't seem to let you pull from other places. I think because of TQSL security they use. This is just some quick stuff here to set up GridTracker. Just where stuff is located. And I guess that maybe answers some of those questions too, about what the buttons are about. Once you do put your credentials in for like logbook of the world, you will want to hit the test button, make sure they're right. And again, logging, offline logging like the N1NM or log for OM does not have to be on the same physical machine that GridTracker is running on. You just change the IP address to a machine IP address and it will shoot across the network. Alerts is something I don't use, but here's how you do it here. You'll see on the left-hand side under enable, I've got them all turned off because I personally find them annoying to keep, especially when you're running as many slice receivers as I'm running. Sometimes it's just a constant stream of chit chat. But you can go ahead in here and set up like under status, what you want to be, what reason you want the alert to happen for. For instance, for grid, right now it's the default is new and unconfirmed. So it's a new grid that you've never seen or a grid that's unconfirmed. It's going to notify you by text to speech and it's going to come out and say wanted grid. Well, you can imagine if you have several of these turned on, and especially if you're new to this, you might have 5 new grids that says wanted grid, wanted grid, wanted grid, and it can be very annoying. But that's basically how that works. The other thing, you got a custom alert here. You can do like a call sign. If say you know that Woodway is going to be on the air at some point, you could put the de-expedition call sign in there so you do get an alert for that. So you can actually be working other stations and waiting until you hear a unique call sign. Or if you've got a favorite person you're waiting for some reason, whatever. You can do that in the custom alerts. The call roster is kind of the crux of GridTracker, at least I think it is anyway. The max age is how long it stays on GridTracker since the last time it was seen. I've got it set to 2 minutes with a theory that if you haven't heard the station in 2 minutes, they're probably gone. That's not always true, but you don't want the call roster to get unwieldy long. I try to keep and that's a personal preference. I try to keep it so there's not a lot of stuff on it, although right now I'm on a 4K monitor and it's more than an entire full screen. It's got a scroll bar, so it's quite a bunch of stuff in there. You can do window hours on top. I found the best thing to do is just explain to your YL or XYL that you need a couple of 4K monitors to run this. I found that with GridTracker, I need 2 monitors just to keep stuff scattered out. I like to keep everything on top. That's a personal preference too. These next 2 things below there on QSO reply, halt all other instances, and switch view. That's when you're running multiple instances of WSJTX. What you don't want to be doing is transmitting on 2 different frequencies at once. It makes for a very ugly noise on the band. And this is one of the enhancements I had Tag do early on because I was running on multiple slice receivers. He only had a 7300, so he didn't see the problem. But when you get into multiple slices, you need to be able to, when you start one instance of WSJTX transmitting, make sure the other instances are turned off first. And why is another alert screen here? I'm not quite sure. I think they might have it in the wrong screen. I don't know why that's at the bottom. OHMS is an online messaging system that I don't personally use, but if you turn it on, other people that are on GridTracker, you can see them. There'll actually be a column on the call roster, and you can talk to each other. So if you see somebody on GridTracker and they're in, West Virginia, you can try to set up a quick schedule and see if you can work them. I guess it could be handy. I just don't find a use for it. But GridTracker, like all of ham radio, has got a lot of things you can do, and they're not for everybody, and everybody doesn't necessarily need them. Here's where I think you can set new logbooks. I've never tried this. Tag and I talked about it when we were doing, like, if you're going to do a special event station, you could do a separate logbook. I think, Dave, you might be able to dig in here and tell it the date when it starts, and it would build a new log here. One of the other links I sent also, which is very helpful to add, and I hopefully forwarded out, is a link to the Quick Start Guide. There's a lot of good information in there too.
After we wrap up, like tonight or tomorrow, I'll put a summary together with all your correspondence because you had a lot of good information. And this Roger shared the PowerPoint presentation as well. So together we've got an excellent package for getting this set up. Thank you.
This here is a picture of the main screen. I guess I'm talking too much. And we'll go down through a few things. So I'll bop back and forth between the main screen and what we're talking about here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. I know a few of them off the top of my head. Right here, this will allow you to go full screen. If you click on that. And then once you go full screen, it's right here, Dave. I see you looking. It's a little kind of double-ended arrow in the upper right corner of the map. And that lets you be full screen instead of in a window. Here where it says GridTracker, again, there's a lot of stuff hidden, but if you click on this whole menu bar goes away and all you have is a map, which if you've got a smaller screen and you're not really using the menu, can be handy. And I'm going to flip down just so I know where my notes are. Okay, grid tracker, map view filters. Okay, if we go back here to filters, right now it says mixed bands, which means all bands. What you could do here is you could drop this down and say just 10 meters, and then you could see like what grid squares you had worked just on 10 meters. We've also got this little trophy here. It works through 7 or 8 different screens. And I don't have them all. I should have, well, you can change it, but as you click on this, it'll step you through screens. The next screen is, I want to say it's all the CQ zones, and after that is all the DX, is all the ITU zones, and it'll show it blocked out. So if you want to see like what ITU zones that you've worked, you could click on this so you get to the ITU zone screen. And then you can say, go mix, will show you all of them, but you may want to just know how many have I worked on 10 meters for some reason. Or maybe you even want to know
Angel.
what mode it is. It's FT8, FT4, and what propagation. It could be satellite. I just do mix because I want to see them all. And then where you're pulling your data from, it's pulling from the logbook and live. You could look at just what's in your logbook here or just what's live. I choose to look at all of them. Let me just flip down. Again, hover over the buttons. So if you're not sure like what the moon does, hover over it and it will tell you. It'll give you a little tool tip. My throat's getting dry. Sometimes it takes a second tool for the tool tip to come out. In this case, the moon, when you click on it, it'll actually show you over the earth where the moon is. So the key ones I've got here is call ROS, that brings that up. There's a statistics screen, which actually is a list of all your QSOs, and it will show you whether they've been confirmed or not. The layer screen we just talked about steps you through the different layers. Setup we walked through already. And then the download button will download from Logbook of the World or whatever you've got set in that log back in the setup screen. I recommend that you only use one source, and I use Logbook of the World. You could use several sources. I think it might get a little confusing because you would see yourself like, you would see maybe a state is confirmed, say Maine is confirmed on QRZ, but somebody that doesn't participate in Logbook of the World. So you still really don't have that for worked all states for Logbook of the World. So I think bringing, your confirmations down from several places, your QSLs, might prove to be quite confusing. Although you could do it. The other time you may need to use this is sometimes, 2 reasons. Sometimes when you upgrade GridTracker, and they supposedly fixed this, but it's not quite right yet, it will lose all your logs, all your Logbook of the World logs. So you have to re-download them. The other thing is if it crashes or the system crashes randomly, you got to re-download it. It seems to like lose all the QSLs. This is still, it's a fairly mature program, but there's still work to be done, like any program. Okay, here's the call roster, which is the crux. I think it's the crux of the whole thing. What makes it really valuable. So if we go back to here, right here is what brings up call this double icon. That's what brings up in a separate window. And so you see this here. You've got an option up here because real estate, I'll tell you when it's active, like what I've seen right now on my screen, real estate's at a premium. So you may want to click in the upper right-hand corner to get rid of all of these settings. They still take effect, but you get rid of them. So you get more real estate for the active calls. Down here, I'm showing which columns you're selecting, and just put a checkbox in the column if you want it or don't, and uncheck it if you don't want the column. I think there are some columns like call sign you can't get rid of, obviously. This is how I have it laid out. It works for me, but again, you got to figure out what works for you. you'll see in this column here, let's look across the column. It starts out with call sign, the band you're on. As you can see, I'm on a couple bands here. I was on 20 and 30, I think, and 40 when I shot this. The colors roughly match PSK reporter. And I say roughly 60 meters and 40 meters are sketchy. Otherwise than that, they're fairly close. What have we got next here? Okay, the grid square. You'll see some people are not sending a grid. Or you heard the transmission partway through and so the grid was missed. What's this calling? What they're calling, whether it's a station they're calling or whether they're calling CQ. If they're calling CQ and you click on, say this one right here, it's going to automatically start WSJTX and reply to that CQ call. If you click on somebody that's not calling CQ, it'll move the messages to WSJTX, but you got to go over to WSJTX and click on enable transmit. And that's intentional. And it's on the part of WSJTX, so it can't be fully automated. I know TAG tried to work with them, and the folks over at WSJTX, and I understand why, they did not want it to be fully automated so somebody could just start this thing running and go to sleep and just rack up QSOs. So it's built in such a way that it can't be fully automated. It's intentional. And then a DXCC, which would be the United States or whatever. If it's in the US, it's the state. Hopefully at some time they will add things like Canadian provinces and Japanese, I think the prefectures and like that. So people that are chasing that kind of stuff, but that's a development effort. Counties is something that I had TAG add because I had to be chasing US counties. It seemed like a good idea at the time. It's kind of fun. It's small, so I can't read. I got to look at the other screen here. Oh, the next column is the signal level it came in on. So you get some rough idea of, what kind of chance you've got at actually making contact with this person. And then what frequency within the 3 kilohertz band they're on. And that gives you a chance to take a quick glance at the waterfall off of WSJTX, see how crowded it is. There again, information is ability to make contact. So try to grab some information there. What else have I got here? I gotta look at the other side. Oh, what ITU it is. I've worked all the CQ zones, and right now I'm just trying to finish up all the ITU zones. If I hadn't worked, say this zone right here, it would be highlighted. Like this particular prefix, I've never worked, that's why it's highlighted. These other call prefixes I've worked somewhere along the line, so they're not being highlighted. I have to look at my other screen so I can read it. Yeah, then prefixes, and a check mark to say whether the person participates in Logbook of the World. The way I've got it set up, and we'll go over this in a second, you'll see there's a question mark here. That means the person has a Logbook of the World account, but they haven't uploaded for at least 3 months. And if you hover over it, you'll see how long since they've uploaded. When I hover over somebody that hasn't uploaded, say, for 5 years and 7 months, I pretty much figure either they're just getting back into the hobby or I'm not going to get a QSL on this contact and maybe I need to think about moving on. The spot column here tells the last time that I was spotted by this station, which gives you a good idea. If they spotted me, I'm probably going to be able to work them. And then it tells the signal level that the received signal level at their end. Again, it's more information as to how, what's the chance of working this successfully. People are using this thing for contesting. So it's important that you get the stations that are most likely going to be able to be worked. And then we've got a column called life. That's how long, and there's a bug in there now. 2 releases ago, they did something, they messed this up a bit. So it doesn't quite work right. Life was supposed to be how long you've been seeing this particular station. Like this station here is like, I think it says 3 seconds or something. It's small, I can't tell. It's a brand new station. A station that's been out for 5 minutes, you've been seeing them consistently. Good, again, a good chance you're going to work them. And then the age is the last time you saw the station. So we might have seen these like 15 seconds ago. Some of these stations would have been a minute or two, so maybe they're kind of fading out. Excuse me. So you'll get used to looking at that stuff and determining which stations are going to be your best chance of a QSL. And particularly when you're contesting, I mean, that's what it's all about, is what's my best chance of a contact. And then F1 will bring you to the shortcut keys. There's a lot of shortcut keys here. And when we looked at map layers, when you looked at that award symbol, and I say you could go through like the CQ zone, the ITU zone, if you just put the number in, you can go directly to it. The other thing is maps. You can recall positions. Like when I'm want to look at counties, I'll have it so the just the United States shows in full screen. So I've got that set up as F6, and F5 takes me back out to a world view. And then you can just kind of work with these and try them out. Another way, other than using that double-ended arrow, is full screen doing F11. And F12 will give you the sidebar menu. One of the things Tag did, he seemed like if he created something, he created at least 3 ways to get there, which can be good. The other thing I have run into before, sometimes it'll do wacky things, if you don't realize that GridTracker, the main screen, has focus, and you'll think you're on another screen. You'll hit like the A key, and it will toggle like the path animation, and it's like it's gone. And you got to try to figure out what you did to do it. That, you know, you caused that little problem. Or at least I do that. My computer's not smart enough yet. I think if I'm looking at Notepad, then that should be what has focus, not GridTracker, because that was the last thing that had focus. So, you know, is that the next thing? Yeah. Okay, so winning with GridTracker, working stations for an award like DXCC, WAS, etc. Theoretically, if you used GridTracker to its fullest, in 148 QSOs, you should be able to get DXCC and WAS. If you only work stations that you needed and stations that were going to give you a QSL fairly promptly. And again, I'm only looking at stations with a high likelihood of QSLing promptly, and you can find that out by hovering over the logbook of the world column, or if you happen to be using QRZ.com. Actually, QRZ does not give you the last time that person uploads. I think it's only logbook of the world tells you the last time they uploaded. And then some just key file locations, the configuration files, and you can't change this. They're in your user ID, documents, GridTracker. Unlike most programs, it's not an option to change it. The program files are all here in GridTracker, and since it's a JavaScript running under Node.js, all the source files are there. So if you're so inclined, you can go make changes, or you can look at it. The WSJTX logs by default are going to be in WSJTX right here in this directory, this app directory. If you have a rig name in there because you're running multiple slices, then you will see multiple directories where each instance of WSJTX will have its own directory. You know, Dave, I'm thinking kind of like as on my feet here, which I'm sitting down, but still on my feet. If you went back, and anyone else, we were all the way back here. You'll notice how I had over here, this WSJTX, had it with a slice. If you put the -R, which is the rig name for a new location, that well will give you new WSJTX logs anyway. if logbook doesn't work, that you might be able to finagle something with that. And I'm only thinking like as I'm speaking here. Let me zip down through real quick and make everybody dizzy. And then just some resources. How do we do on time? Yeah, 42 minutes. I was targeting 45.
Right on the money. Roger,
Not bad.
no, excellent. Thank you. Hey, quick question. When you're operating day in, day out, FT8 or whatever, do you even have the WSJT window up in front of you anymore, or do you just shrink it down and work right off the grid tracker?
No, I've got it up in front of me because I want to see the waterfall and stuff.
Okay, right.
And I want to be able to change frequencies. Within the
Oh,
the
sure,
3
yeah,
kilohertz
yeah.
range.
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's why I said you've got to explain to the XYL why this requires 2 to 3 4K monitors.
These big monitors.
A big monitor is, I'll be very honest with you, is helpful. If you were running a single instance and that's all you were doing, a single 4K would probably do it. Because I'm used to also having the radio on the screen too, because I'm running a Flex.
Right.
So the Flex has no knobs on it. So all the knobs are on the screen too.
I'm intrigued by what you brought up initially with the monitoring several slices of spectrum at the same time. That makes perfect sense. I've never done that. Don't think I have the capability to do it. Maybe I do. I don't know. But with
It depends on what you got for a radio.
I mean, it's got dual VFOs, I guess. Yeah, you can listen to 2 audio at once. Why not 2 bands on? Yeah, I don't know. Never crossed my mind to even think of that.
I think like a 7610 is dual what they call dual watch. I think you could do that.
When
You just feed it to 2 different instances of WSJTX.
Sure. So that was what I was going to ask. So you're running 2. Yeah. So if say we're using SDRs and you had 2 or more set up, you essentially would run an instance for each, I would assume. And
Yep.
Okay.
Like the dual play SDR.
Or even if you just had a stack of the those little RTL SDRs or something.
Yep.
I don't know. That would be pretty neat. Just to monitor a bunch of bands at once. Yeah.
As you look at this diagram right here, each one of these WSJTX is a single instance
Okay. Oh, sure.
of WSJTX. And this is when Tag and I were working together. Again, he was running a 7300, so we could only run one slice at a time, one receive channel. And his first, I said, well, I'm running 4 slices. And his first comment was just run 4 copies of GridTracker. And early on, that's what you had to do. But that was one weekend, I think it was a whole weekend, he spent and did a whole bunch of work so GridTracker could accept from multiple slices, multiple instances of WSJTX and consolidate everything. Because on the call roster, you want to see everything in one spot.
Right.
And then you want to make the decision, what's my most important contact right this minute?
It's very intriguing. I have to sit down and think about that sometime. Here we have more than a few 6 meter enthusiasts. And however, if you're just monitoring 6 meter FT8, you could monitor that all day and not hear anybody but each other, sending out the occasional call. It'd be great just to have, say, an SDR monitoring 6 meter FT8 and then go about whatever business on the rig and keep an eye on that. Well,
this sounds like a whole lot of fun to have multiple slices and a couple of 4K monitors, but I can assure you it runs well for me on a laptop in my camper van in the middle of nowhere, and it all fits on my one laptop screen. I run WSJTX and GridTracker, and GridTracker in the offline mode. By the way, there's a button, the online offline button in GridTracker in its menu system to set it that way. And it actually runs great.
Yep.
What does that button look like, Barry? I don't think I have that up.
In In mine, I have, let's see, it's toggle online offline mode.
Okay.
And it looks kind of like I can't even describe it. It's kind of circular and it's mostly green.
That's good enough. I'll poke around. Excellent.
Gary, this is Rich. Why would you run it in offline mode? Just if you're out of range?
Because I burned up my cell phone allocation here a couple times in the last 2 months. And you don't need pretty maps. I just want to know where these grid squares are, because I just want to know.
Excellent.
Quick question. If I want to be alerted if any one of several different specific call signs are on the air,
Yeah.
I know that we have one for a certain select call sign. Can I have a list of call signs?
Like in this custom alerts here,
Custom alerts.
right, you just go ahead and put it in and then click the add button.
So it's the call sign, enable, status, new, notify, value. Where's the add button?
Right here on the right-hand side of the box.
Custom alerts, call sign. Okay, excellent.
Right where I'm circling.
I see it now. Good.
Yep. That should do what you want. And you can do more than call signs. You can do grids. And I think DXCCs too, as I recall. And not one of those, GridTracker has got so much stuff. There's a lot that I don't use. Not because I don't know it's there. It's just it haven't needed it.
Yeah. Well, everyone uses it a little different.
Yeah,
No, that
that's
was
the beauty of the ham radio hobby is everybody can do it a little different and enjoy it.
It's the hobby of 1,000 hobbies.
Yep. So any other questions? Does that kind of help everybody get going?
Yeah, excellent. I found the GitHub repository for it, and I'll poke through that. And I found the groups IO thing, and I'll subscribe to that. And any more questions, I'll write to them.
Yeah, the groups IO people, I do moderate that periodically. I've been doing just some other projects, but they're usually pretty helpful, and the responses are, pretty quick and good.
Excellent.
And before you go to groups IO, because everybody will tell you this, is if you didn't look in the quick start guide, and there are some of the moderators that will be quite happy to remind you to look at the quick start guide, because your question is probably answered in there.
Okay.
And I sent the link to Ed, and once he bundles this all up for you guys.
I've gone in the I've used the quick start guide a lot, but there are gaps in it. And the last time I looked at it, I actually sent in this suggestion, but the last time I looked at it, I couldn't tell whether it had been changed at all since the previous time I looked at it. And it would be helpful if they would put a version date or something like that in there, so you know if anything's been added or not.
Yep, it would be. This is definitely a work in process.
Mhm.
TAG was very involved in this up until about 3 or 4 months ago. And then it got passed off to a group of developers, and they're still getting their feet wet and getting everything together. It's turned out, it started out as just this would be real handy, from TAG standpoint, this would be something real handy. It's better than scratching off grids on a piece of paper. And it kind of grew and grew and grew, and now it's become quite a product.
It's given me a lot of ideas. I think just what you brought up, Barry, with the custom alert, but instead of call signs, grid squares, put in that one. or whatever the ones that, of course, from your perspective, you are that grid square, but
Yeah, I'm in
those
the
folks.
opposite way. I
for the folks at
activate
the
a
other
rare-
end, yeah.
I activate a rare grid square, and before I go, I collect a list of people who want to work that grid square. I know they're serious chasers, and I give them priority. I want to know if they're on it.
Oh, there you go. Put them in the custom list, alert list. Perfect. Well, I just added yourself and Greg. So now I want to be notified 24/7 anytime you're on any band.
All right.
I'll find some really loud media file here. This is really fun. I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this. Hey, Roger, thank you so much. Anybody else have questions for Roger? I'm sure we let him.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you
just
for
looking
staying
at
up.
the notes here.
Oh, thank you much. I'll get this connected to WSJTX and give it a go.
Yes. Well, I sort of set mine up while Roger was presenting, and you were right. It pretty much found my call sign. It found WSJTX. It's populating the map. I could see the live data on the grid tracker as it's decoding. it's gonna be all right. Mission
Yeah,
accomplished.
It's pretty much if you're just out of the box, you're an out of the box person. This should pop in out of the box. So the countries that I've confirmed are green, the ones I've worked but haven't confirmed are yellow, and then all the rest of them are ones I need to work. And as I go through here on this thing here, the trophy,
Gotcha.
this is all the counties I've worked. And I was mentioning that you have that function key, well, I got it set up as F6. If I had hit F6, it's going to bring it right up and pop it up front. So Dave, maybe if you're working people local on grids, you may want to have a function key all set up so you can get a little better look at it. And then the next screen here is counties. And those are all the grids in the United States that I've worked. And that's, again, all the grids. I've got stuff, so I've hit F5 and it just pops back to a world view.